Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Phil Beatty, the editor of the Times Higher Education World University Rankings, and it's a great honor to be here today launching what I think actually is the most exciting of our extensive rankings portfolio, the 100 under 50 rankings. I have a very distinguished panel, and it's a very important event, so thank you all for coming. So we all know the best universities in the world are old, yeah? Oxford can trace its origins back 900 years. Harvard was founded in 1636. The average age of the universities in the top 200 of the Times Higher Education World University Rankings is close to 200. So there's no doubt that the old guard of universities have huge advantages. They've got more time to accumulate property and wealth. They're often part of the fabric of major cities, and they're trusted custodians of national treasures. They have had centuries to accumulate loyal, deep, enduring alumni networks, and they enjoy rich traditions of scholarship with reputations to match. In that climate, you think that young universities don't stand a chance. So when I first conceived the 100 under 50 ranking in 2011, it was hard to escape the nagging feeling that it had been created for the underdog. That yes, it was a great opportunity to showcase a new breed of universities, those that have managed to achieve great things in a very short space of time compared to their older counterparts, but also those that are showing great future potential. There was a suspicion that the young minnows needed their own pool to swim in to not get eaten up by the big old sharks. But things have really changed. Today, there's a really exciting, genuine sense of optimism and confidence among the young universities. The leaders of the new generation of institutions featured in this top 100 list are bullish. They're happy to compete on equal terms with the old guard. They're confident of their ability to thrive in a dynamic and diverse higher education sector. In fact, in an uncertain, changing global higher education market that demands risk-taking, strategic focus, bravery, flexibility, and above all, innovation, some see their relative youth not as a hindrance, but as a clear strategic advantage. So I'm delighted to welcome today a superb panel of these dynamic and exciting university leaders. In a moment, I'm going to introduce the results and highlights of the 2014 THE 100 under 50 rankings, and then we're going to have short presentations from the panel, wonderful, inspiring case studies of achievement, and then we're going to open the session to audience Q&A. So on the panel today, we have Wendy Purcell, the Vice-Chancellor and Chief Executive of Plymouth University in the UK. We've got Euiho, the Chair of the University Evaluation and Management Committee at Pahang University of Science and Technology in Korea. He's kindly agreed to stand in for Steve Kang, the President of KAIST in Korea, who's unfortunately was here on Monday but had to return to Korea on urgent business. We have Alvaro Costa, the Vice-Rector of the University of Campinas in Brazil, and Cohen Lamberts, the Vice-Chancellor of the UK's University of York. But first, I'm very, very excited, genuinely very excited, to introduce a special guest. You may know him as the star of the X-Men movies, or indeed as the head of the USS Enterprise and Star Trek TV show, or indeed as an acclaimed Shakespearean actor and an outstanding stage talent. But from Times Higher Education's perspective, I know him best as a brilliantly committed and passionate advocate of higher education, as the Chancellor of the UK's University of Huddersfield, which was founded in its current status in 1992, and it's Times Higher Education's University of the Year. So if we could please welcome to the stage Sir Patrick Stewart.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I am so delighted to be here. It has been an invitation on my calendar for many, many months, and there is no better illustration of why Huddersfield has been doing so well in the last few years than the very bulldog tenacity of our Vice-Chancellor, Bob Cryan. hardly a couple of weeks went by when I wasn't reminded that there was Miami still ahead of me, and would I be here, and how long could I stay? And it was literally only in the last few days that I was able to say, yes, book me a flight, I'm on my way. So it always makes me very proud when I can stand up and speak for Huddersfield. But on occasions such as this, when I can reflect a little bit about the values of higher education, it gives me particular pride, as I will mention shortly, because I had no access to higher education when I was growing up. And therefore, to find myself now involved with higher and further education as I do gives me enormous satisfaction. Except for the 2 years of acting training I received at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, I did not receive any formal higher education. I left school at 15 and 2 days, and my birthday always fell just at the end of the summer term, which was a wonderful thing to look forward to. And for a number of years, I managed to muddle through somehow with no qualifications whatsoever. But I went to drama school, and I got work pretty soon afterwards in regional theatre. I worked in Lincoln doing weekly rep, which means that you do a new play every Monday night, challenging. Then Sheffield for 2.5 years, then on tour with the London Old Vic Company, then up to Manchester to the Library Theatre, and from there to the Liverpool Playhouse, and from there to the Bristol Old Vic Company, which I was delighted to be part of because they were monthly rep, which meant that you had 4 weeks to rehearse every play. And from there to the only place that I can accurately say was the very center and focus of my ambition, and that was the Royal Shakespeare Company. I joined that company in 1966, and that was when my higher education began. A fine education it was. I was exposed to the minds of people like Peter Hall, John Barton, and in a short time, Trevor Nunn, all, of course, Cambridge graduates. And in the company, that first year I was there, were Derek Jacobi and Tony Church, both Cambridge graduates. Clever, highly educated, thoughtful, inventive, creative people. At the very first rehearsal I attended, expecting, as had been my experience, to get up on my feet and start acting my small role in the first scene of Henry IV, Part 1, blocking the scene, as we used to call it. No, instead there was a circle of chairs, and we were all invited to sit down, and the director began to talk about the scene and its very internal structure, the purpose of it being where it was, of what it contributed to the play as a whole, of the verse, the language, and so forth. And he talked for a long time, and I'd never heard a speech like it concerning dramatic literature. And then he turned to the actor on his left and said, "So, Tony, do you want to say something?" And Tony Church talked and talked and talked and talked, and then the next actor. And to my horror, I realized we would go around the circle, and we would come to Patrick Stewart, who had nothing to say, nothing. All I did was learn the lines, learn the moves, and do my best. I never used this at all. But I went home that afternoon, and I made a promise to myself I would never, never be in that situation again when I thought nothing and had nothing to say. But being exposed, and so what I did, by the way, I just listened for 2 years. I kept my mouth shut, and I listened to these very clever people. It was a powerful factor in helping me to make some success of my acting career, all the way from the stages at Stratford and London and eventually New York to the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, and then back again to those very same stages, and then out once more to lead Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Children and the now famous X-Men. By the way, the new movie opens in 2 weeks' time. Ian McKellen and myself have leading parts in it. I hope you will not miss the opportunity. It also played its part in one of the very proudest distinctions that has come my way, for I am Chancellor of the University of Huddersfield in the county of Yorkshire in the north of England. It is actually my local university, for I was born and brought up in a neighbouring town. And Huddersfield is what is known in the UK as a new university. They used to be called Red Brick, but I think this is a much more attractive title. But because we are a nation that has been known to engage in a certain amount of snobbishness, class, social, and educational distinction from time to time, and fans of Downton Abbey, that will come as no surprise to any of you. But these distinctions, often unfair, are drawn between the top or the elite universities and the new universities, despite the fact that teaching and research at the latter are often highly innovative and reach standards of global excellence. Newness as a concept can be used patronizingly and pejoratively, but it can also denote energy, freshness, and above all, innovation. At the University of Huddersfield, for example, it is the future that excites us. The groups that are carrying out world-class research in fields such as artificial intelligence, particle accelerators, turbo technology, and pharmaceutics, as well as the next generation of high-speed railways. And we don't ignore art and culture in fields such as drama, creative writing, and electronic music. The new or younger universities are proving to be highly progressive, experimental, and making a significant impact. And all the time, industrial partnerships are blossoming, and increasingly research-intensive universities are being seen as an integral part of the economic regeneration of their regions. A very significant factor in West Yorkshire particularly, and throughout many of the northern parts of the UK. At Huddersfield, we have developed ties with companies of no less stature than Borg Warner and 3M. Corporations, we have learned, are interested in excellence and innovation wherever it is to be found. And increasingly, they will seek it at universities which are not encrusted by age and tradition and elitism, but which are quick on their feet, hungry to play a key role in the global research community, and responsive to the needs of industry and the economy. All my life, I have loved tradition and history, Shakespeare being my foremost passion. But the 100 under 50 concept strikes me most particularly as a highly democratic one. It says that what matters about a university is the quality and the ambition of its research and graduate employability, and not how much ivy is clinging to its walls. Every region, every country, every global community as a whole needs to unlock the potential of every individual. And in every commencement speech that I have made for the last 10 years, that is something that I always stress to our graduating students, to urge them to understand that they're not clones, they're not stereotypes, there are no rip-offs of them anywhere. They are all unique and individual. And it is that uniqueness and individuality that is one of their greatest assets, and it's one that they have to celebrate. It seems to me that the 100 under 50 rankings are an important and an inspirational step in the right direction. And they will be even more important and inspirational when the University of Huddersfield join those rankings. So watch this space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I think I've made a terrible mistake in allowing Sir Patrick to speak before me, actually. It's a hard act to follow, but I loved that speech, and it really does speak of the kind of institutions we're celebrating here today. I think we should adopt that motto about it's not about how much ivy is clinging to the walls. So sorry, I haven't got a clicker. I should have prepared a bit more readily. Oh, thank you very much. So I think Times Higher Education is best known for the traditional world university rankings. We've been publishing them for 10 years now. The 11th edition is due out in October, just a little bit later than the next X-Men movie. But it's become a huge annual phenomenon. We're attracting tens of millions of people to the site throughout the country. It's become an important tool for student consumers and their families to make educated decisions, but it's also becoming a geopolitical tool. It's a tool to help universities understand their performance, but also governments to understand their performance. So we've started seeing them making business news headlines because they speak about an institution's role in promoting the knowledge economy. And that's why I think the Times Higher Education rankings have actually become trusted by governments throughout the world. We have the UK's University Minister, David Willetts, talking about how our indicators reflect national policy priorities in the UK. And the Indian Minister of State for Human Resource Development, Shashi Tharoor, has also talked about using the Times Higher's rankings as a benchmark. But you know what? There is something I have to be really honest about and say they're a bit boring. They're predictable. The top 5 is utterly dominated by the US. The top 10 has 7 US universities in it. And if you look at the geographical distribution of the top 200 universities, staggering 76 of them are in the US, but they're concentrated very heavily in the developed world, North America, and Western Europe. And there's something else stubbornly predictable about the rankings. All the universities featured are old. As I said earlier, the average age is close to 200 in the top 200. If you look around the world, there's only 2 of the universities at the top of their regions who were founded in the last century. The University of Sao Paulo is a slip of a thing at 80 years old. The rest are even older. So Clark Kerr, the first chancellor of the University of California, Berkeley, said in 1982, about 85 institutions in the Western world, established by 1520, still exist in recognizable forms, with similar functions, with unbroken histories, including the Catholic Church, the Parliament of Great Britain, and 70 universities. Kings that rule, feudal lords with vassals, and guilds with monopolies are all gone. But these 70 universities, however, are still in the same locations, with the same buildings, with the professors and students doing much the same things, and with governance carried on in much the same way. And of course, the quest for knowledge is unending and enduring. But is tradition really a prerequisite for world-class education? It doesn't sound like it from Clark Kerr's perspective, and of course, the 1960s Californian institutions prove that it doesn't take centuries, you can do it in decades. And the world is changing. This is Jamil Salmi, author of The Challenge of Establishing World-Class Universities from the World Bank. The decision of several middle and high-income countries to step up investment in support of their elite universities under various excellence initiatives shows their determination to attain drastic short-term improvement. The old universities can't rest on their laurels. People are investing in developing new institutions, revamping existing institutions. So we wanted to showcase these achievements, highlight these institutions, shine a light on them. So we came up with the under 50 concept. We consulted with many people to create the ranking, but one of the people we spoke to was Andrew Oswald, an economist at the young University of Warwick. I think it's about 48 years old, which I still think is very young. Most empires eventually crumble, especially those that think it could never happen to them. Once upon a time, both Harvard and Berkeley were derided as Nowhereville. Probably some snobby English people were quite cocky about these upstarts. in America. The rankings give us a sense of perspective. So let's get on to the results. We use the 13 indicators used in the traditional rankings. We're looking at the teaching environment, research output, we're looking at internationalization, we're looking at knowledge transfer. We examined 50 million research paper citations for 5 million papers over a 5-year period. We survey the views of 60,000 academics around the world since 2010. But we changed the formula. We calibrated differently to reflect the characteristics of younger universities. We put more emphasis on the hard objective indicators and less emphasis on the subjective opinion surveys. So we probably needed a drum roll or maybe a top of the pop style countdown. But let's get on to the top 10. So in 10th place, up from 14th last year, it's the UK's Lancaster University, founded in 1964. Holding its place in 9th is France's Université Pierre et Marie Curie, which was given its current status as a university in 71. In 8th, up from 10th last year, it's another French 1971 institution, Université Paris-Sud. In 7th, down from 5th last year, it's the University of California, Irvine, 1965. And in 6th, the same position as last year, from the Netherlands, it's Maastricht University, a real youngster founded in 1967. But this is where it gets really quite interesting, especially from a Western perspective. In 5th, the Nanyang Technological University, which is only 23 years old. It was founded in 1991. It has achieved incredible results in a very short space of time. In 4th, another 91 institution, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. 5th, it's KAIST, 1971, in Korea, the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. 2nd, it's EPFL in Switzerland. And the world's #1 young university for the 3rd year in a row is the Pahang University of Science and Technology, POSTECH. And I'm delighted we have a representative from POSTECH here today to talk about what an incredible success story that is. We've got magazines to distribute to you after the session, so if you can't read the screens, it's fine, but I just wanted to stress the diversity of that top 10. We have representatives from 8 countries. It's a really powerful sign that actually, right across the world, the old guard in Western Europe, North America, have got a lot of challenges. Across the world, there's 29 different countries represented in the top 10. It's hugely more diverse than the traditional rankings. No country has more than 14 representatives. That's the UK. Although the UK is relying very heavily on its 60s institutions, we need to see a nurturing of a new generation. Australia has 14. Taiwan is Asia's top representative with 4 top 100 universities. I think this diversity is really exciting. We had a meeting here in Miami on Monday, the Young Universities Summit, and there was a tangible sense of enthusiasm in the room. 35 countries represented, a shared sense of optimism and spirit. See, Hong Kong UST has got a very strong commitment to international outlook, which I think is essential to universities in forging new alliances, forging new research partnerships, sucking in global talent. Maastricht, incredibly powerful commitment to internationalization. This is an indicator looking at the international students, international faculty, and international collaboration of research. But I don't need to go on about these case studies because we have a fantastic panel. But I just wanted to say to you again, these are similar characteristics. Is there a common sense that younger universities don't have huge endowments in general terms? They tend to be more focused. They tend to be able to focus resources on core niche areas of strength. They're not bound by longer-term social obligations to deliver, try and do everything for everybody and spread themselves too thinly. They have management dexterity. They have a really strong applied focus, like we've heard about Huddersfield. Their research is tailored to specific local and national economic needs. They're engaged with industry and business. They're producing work-ready graduates with the skills needed. There's a strong sense of commonality between these institutions. But I'm not going to dwell on that. I want to hand over to the panel. I want to leave time for questions. So to get us going on the case studies and to talk about their individual institutions' experiences, I invite to the stage, if I can get into my ridiculously convoluted papers, Wendy Purcell. Wendy's the Vice Chancellor and President of Plymouth University in the UK. She's a scientist with a PhD in biomedicine, a distinguished career, focuses on working with pharma and biotech. Wendy's an advisor to the UK government, and she chairs the National Council of Healthcare Science. She was previously Deputy Vice Chancellor of Hertfordshire University and Dean of Applied Sciences and Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research at the University of the West of England, Bristol, all institutions that got their university status in 1992. A very dynamic group. So I'd like to hand over to Wendy. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you to the Times Higher for inviting me to present can you go back one slide, please? To present a case study on Plymouth University. And the task I've been set is to focus on the distinctiveness of our academic mission. We set out our stall when I joined the university in 2007-08 to be the enterprise university, and I think when we set out that very distinctive and bold mission, I never thought that the captain of the Starship Enterprise would be my warm-up man to today, so thank you very much to Sir Patrick Stewart for that. But seriously, the enterprise mission was very much about taking the university and connecting it very deeply with the society that we serve. So to take the two pillars of our university around teaching, learning, and research and innovation, and to step out of an ivory tower and connect very deeply with society. And I think one of the distinctive features of our university is that we are open to talent wherever it exists. We talk about wide gate for talent in terms of social inclusion, but we offer that alongside a deep research-informed and research-led opportunity, with 80% of our research being of international repute. So we're very much off the curve in that sense with our enterprise mission and our sense of strategic direction, and that's a really distinctive feature of Plymouth University. So our focus is around transforming lives through education and research. It's very simple, it's what we do, and we recognise very humbly that what we do as a university matters. It really matters, and we take our role as custodians of the university very seriously. So we are an institution that is locally rooted, an anchor institution connected deeply to the place that we serve in the southwest of England, very much a focus on partnerships as being a real strength of those connections, and a real sense that we're there to make place. So locally rooted, but increasingly globally connected. So we have a real sense that it is our responsibility to launch our graduates as global citizens and to undertake world-class research alongside partners, whether that's in Boston, Sri Lanka, Hong Kong, a real sense that we are globally connected. And that sense of purpose drives us to connect very powerfully research and innovation to drive the translation of what the institution does and translate it into society. So through our innovation ecosystem, our enterprise ecosystem, to allow ideas to take form, to take shape, to take those ideas, incubate them on campus, take them through into university-led innovation centres, to our science park, and create jobs and work, and to drive our enterprise ecosystem. One of the key decisions we made as an institution, particularly in the UK, there was a lot of discussion around students as customers, was we said students are not customers. Students are partners with us. They partner with us. And they are a key force for innovation. They help shape our university. And it's really important that as we launch those professionals and leaders of tomorrow, that we take very seriously our role to listen to the students and help them bring their ideas and creativity into the university. And rather than tell you about our fantastic students, I want them to tell you why Plymouth.
Hi, my name is Marcel Herrera. I'm 21 years old and I'm currently studying navigation and maritime at Plymouth University. Describe Plymouth University are definitely encouraging and aspirational. They've inspired me to think further and ahead of myself and lay out a clear path of what I want to do after university.
The Plymouth University have helped me achieve a get to the South Pole in Antarctica. I skied to the South Pole as part of the International Scots Centennial Expedition. Plymouth University provided funding for the expedition, and since then I'm now working as the Global Ambassador of Plymouth University, travelling around the world, giving inspirational talks in schools about science and about exploration. The words I'd use to describe Plymouth University, it has a huge passion for inspiring change across the world, and it really prepares that graduate to go out into the real world and make a massive difference.
Have I worked with some inspirational people here at Plymouth? I really have. I'm now involved with the lead artist for a project called Creating the Spectacle that has had international attention, that's about transforming preconceptions through using a wheelchair underwater. It's created this amazing machinery that non-disabled people say, I want to go in one of those. We're also talking about a flying wheelchair, and because I spoke at NASA recently, we're also talking about the possibility of creating imagery of wheelchairs in space. Unbelievable, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without the support I've had here at Plymouth.
Every day. So in terms of our university, the Lord Kestenbaum was inaugurated as the university's very first Chancellor last year. It was in our 21st year last year, and it was very much a point in our history about the university coming of age. And what he said was, when you put ambition and opportunity together, you can change the world. And I think what we're seeing with the Times 100 under 50 rankings is a sense of ambition and opportunity, and we're here to change the world. So thank you very much.
So Alvaro Costa is the Vice Rector at the University of Campinas in Brazil, where he's also a geosciences professor. He's currently Associate Editor of the Geological Society of America Bulletin and the Brazilian Journal of Geology. He's a Fellow of the Society of Economic Geologists, and he's also a member of the Distinguished Lecture Committee. In 1994, he received the Unicamp Zeferino Vaz Award, and in 2010, he received the Merit Award from the Engineering and Agronomy Regional Council of Sao Paulo. So I'd like to welcome you to the stage.
Thank you, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be part of this distinguished panel and to be able to have the opportunity to let you know a few facts about the University of Campinas Unicamp. We were founded in 1966 as a public university of the state of São Paulo system, together with the University of São Paulo and the Paulista State University, Unesp. And we have a strong focus on high-quality teaching, absolutely in synergy with top-end research and service to society. Unicamp has driven a paradigm shift in Brazil by building very solid, very robust bridges between academia and industry. That wasn't common in Brazil until the 60s. So let me show green one. Okay. So this map show, the first one is map of Brazil in gray and white there. The yellow one is the state of São Paulo, and then the Campinas metropolitan region. We are at crossroads of a booming industry and agriculture area. The metropolitan region of Campinas has 19 municipalities with almost 3 million inhabitants, with a GDP just over $50 billion in 2010. That's approximately 3% of the Brazil's entire GDP. And accounts for 6% of Brazil's industrial production, the third largest industrial region in the country. And we are home to 50 of the 500 world's largest companies like Motorola, IBM, Samsung, HP, 3M, Honda, Goodyear, Exxon, Compaq, Syngenta, and many others. And one of the main reasons these companies are there is because of the university. None of them were in that region before, and they select to be in Campinas because of the human resource they could get being close to a university like Unicamp. The city of Campinas has a GDP of $18 billion, 1 million inhabitants, and has, besides Unicamp, has 20 research and technology institutes. That's our, in a very brief way, our profile. We'll have 23 faculty and institutes plus a number of research centers, 66 undergraduate course and 126 graduate course, both master and doctorates, in 5 campuses. The main campus is in Barão Geraldo district in Campinas, but we have other 4 campuses in Piracicaba, Limeira, Paulínia, which are neighboring towns. And we also have 2 technical colleges, 3 hospitals, just below 1,800 faculty members, almost all of them with PhD degrees, and 9% work at full time for the universities. And approximately 37,000 students, being 18,000 undergraduate and 19,000 graduate students. The rankings show us as one of the leading institutions, academic institutions in Latin America. So are just 2 of the rank, and I guess I'll have to update that left-hand part there soon. And also that we'll be dropping out of the university under 50-year-olds cohort very soon, as in 2 years' time will be 50 years. And Phil made it very clear that there are no exceptions to that rule. So some facts about Unicamp. We are the top Brazilian university in the number of published papers per faculty member, responsible for 15% of the country's articles in scientific journals, and 46% of our graduate courses were ranked by CAPES, the Ministry of Education Agency, as top grades 6 and 7. That's the maximum grade a graduate course can have. And we have a national assessment program which assess all graduate courses in the country in the same ranking system. So we have this 46% of top courses against the average of 11% of the country. And we're also the top Brazilian university in number of patents and licensed patents. So I was asked here to comment on which are the reasons for our success, and I came up with a very incomplete and non-comprehensive list, which I'd like just to mention, and I think that's a very common feature among the successful young universities all over the world. We are able to attract distinguished young faculty members by providing them a suitable teaching environment and freedom of research. And in the Brazilian scene, academic scene, it's not very common for a faculty member to move to other institutions. So when we hire someone, it's usually someone young, we are really betting on a future for at least 30 to 40 years of that person's career. So we must be very selective, very picky to hire our new faculty members, because we know that our success will partially depend on them. We have periodical and rigorous assessment of academic performance of all faculty members, a flexible institutional environment, sensitive and very responsive to societal demands, we managed to get a balance between recruiting the best students and promoting social inclusion, something which is absolutely crucial in countries like Brazil, which are marked by very strong socioeconomic inequalities. So our students which are socially included come usually from the public school system and ethnic minorities. We try and are very successful in doing that to immerse our undergrad students from the very beginning of their course in research projects. We have a large program of scientific initiation which starts in the second and third year in the undergraduate course. And finally, we managed to build solid relationship between academic activities and innovation entrepreneurship. We have a very large number of students involved in innovation and entrepreneurship besides our faculty and research. So as I mentioned, I don't think this is any recipe, and I believe that most of the young universities are doing exactly the same. But some of these things, if not all, are much easier said than done. And I think the successful ones are the ones who manage to really do it. Thank you very much.
Cohen Lamberts is the Vice-Chancellor of the UK's York University. He has a PhD in experimental psychology. Previously at Warwick University, he's held posts including Faculty Chair for Science, the Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Research, Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Provost. He's collaborated with commercial and industrial partners in applied research that is focused on consumer behaviour and product design. He's a recipient of the British Psychological Society's Cognitive Award, the Experimental Psychology Society Prize. Cohen, welcome.
Thank you very much, Phil. Last year, the University of York came 7th in the rankings. And this year, we're not in it. And, you know, those of you who know me will say, that was quick, you've only been there for 4 months. The real reason, though, is that we are 51 years old this year. So the rules, as Phil said, are mercilessly applied. But in those 51 years, the university really has established itself in the top 10 of UK higher education institutions and among the world's best 100 universities, regardless of age. And I think there are two striking aspects of that achievement. The first is really how quickly that has happened. You know, given that world rankings in particular are so reliant on reputation, and that reputation can take generations to build. You know, even if you're very good, it's still quite remarkable that happens so fast. The second surprising aspect, perhaps, is that York's performed equally well in metrics of teaching as in metrics of research. And that's something which is not true of every highly ranked, especially young university. Now, if you were to identify the single most important driver of the university's success in recent years, then it would have to be its research excellence. In the UK, there is a national assessment of research quality every 6 or 7 years or so. And in these exercises, the research of each department is evaluated by peer review. That is a very intensive, a very competitive process, and it produces what you could say is the definitive league table of research strength, research quality in the UK. And in the last two assessments, York was ranked in the top 10 of British universities, which is quite an achievement if you think about who else is in that top 10. You know, that is Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, University College London, LSE, Edinburgh, and other such established names. So I think we've demonstrated that a new university can outperform the established order. And being young gives you some distinct advantages, we think. And they've already been hinted at. We are not hidebound by long-established traditions, conventions that may get in the way of innovation or flexibility. We're not so devolved and rooted in structures that we can't merge research groups or invent new departments. We can do all those things still. And because we operate in an environment that is highly dynamic, governments in most countries in the last 20 years have had huge impacts on higher education through deliberate policy making. And higher education having become such a competitive industry, if we are to take advantages of the new opportunities that arise as a result of those changes, we have to be ready to change ourselves, you know, review our internal structures. And it's not impossible to do that in an older university, but it's certainly more difficult than it is in a young institution. So one of the challenges for me and my colleagues at York now is how we preserve that flexibility, that capacity to adapt as we grow and as we get older. We've now reached the level of maturity that requires us to think very hard about how we should continue to do things. And we're going through a major strategic review of the university at this time, a review that will be focusing on how it does research, how it does its teaching, to make sure that we maintain some of that flexibility as we become truly established as a mature institution. So, in summary, I would say that the crucial advantage that our university now has, together with many other universities that were founded in the 20th century, is that we are still young enough to adapt, but we're also old enough to be established and to be world class. So it's that informality, flexibility we have, a global mindset, and I think a concentration on the core mission and the fundamentals that drive our institution that I think have made our university successful. And I certainly think they will continue to serve us as we move further into middle age. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got our final speaker before we move on to what I hope will be a lively Q&A session at the end of the day. Professor Euiho Su is the chair of the University Evaluation and Management Committee at the Pohang University of Science and Technology in Korea. He's a special advisor on international relations at the university as well, and he's also a teacher in industrial management, and I'm delighted that he'll be speaking not just about the world #1 ranked POSTECH, but also on behalf of Professor Steve Kang from KAIST. He'll be talking a bit about KAIST as well. So welcome, Professor Su.
Can I move this control this?
Just the green.
This one? Okay. My name is Euiho. I'm teaching industrial engineering and taking care of the globalization and rankings of POSTECH, and by chairing the committee. And in fact, Steve Songmo Kang is the president of KAIST, is supposed to make a presentation today, and there was an accident, campus accident at KAIST, so he had to fly back to Korea, I think, yesterday. So he asked me to make a presentation about KAIST, and obviously, because I'm teaching at POSTECH, I said, okay, I'm gonna combine KAIST and POSTECH together. And in fact, I got a master's degree from KAIST in 1977. So as an alumnus, I'm qualified to introduce KAIST, but I'm teaching at POSTECH, so a very awkward situation right now. But so I made this yesterday night, in fact. Okay, 2 science and technology engines of Korea, and this is very interesting. KAIST ranked #3 today, and POSTECH ranked #1, and 100 times higher education, 50 under, 3 years in a row. So very lucky. Let me compare 2 universities. One is my alma mater. The other one is my job. Okay, so okay. See, KAIST is a public foundation. Is a public university. Is a government sponsored. Is established in 1971. I was admitted in 1975. Actually, I was student body president. And POSTECH private school, which is founded by POSCO. POSCO is a steel company. Is I think a number 3 in the world in terms of the sales amount. You know, Korea, there are 3 the companies which are feeding Korea. Samsung Electronics, is, you know, the Galaxy and smartphone and the TV, and then Hyundai and Kia. Those are the same company. Hyundai and Kia is is an automobile company. I think number 5 in the world in terms of sales. And then POSCO. POSCO is still making company. So there are 3 companies, leading companies, which are feeding Korean people. And so POSCO established POSTECH 1986. I think up to now, they invested probably, I think, $3 to $5 billion so far. And the location is Daejeon, KAIST is Daejeon, 150 kilometers from Seoul. POSTECH is Pohang, 350 kilometers from Seoul. So, 1 hour flight, 3 hours by train, like that. And enrollment is 1,100. KAIST, POSTECH 3,400. So about 1/3. And then faculty is 1,379, and POSTECH is about 500. So is faculty size also about a little bit more than 1/3. And then rankings, world rankings is KAIST was 56 and POSTECH 60. In fact, 2013 is the first time POSTECH became behind. POSTECH was ahead, but became behind. But interestingly, in the 50 under, KAIST was number 3, POSTECH is number 1. The why it is reversed, because that weight of reputation is different. So KAIST, because is older, has more reputation. So when your reputation, the weight is higher, is heavy, then KAIST is ahead. And the weight of reputation is low, then POSTECH is ahead. It's pretty, we are close each other. Annual budget is 675 million, and we are 323 million. So, and quickly, because I have only 8 minutes, I think. So Korea Advance, well, this is made by Sungmo Kang, Steve Kang, so I'm just have to read through, because this is not made by me. So through knowledge creation, and actually Korea Advanced Institute of Science Technology, but there's another meaning that knowledge creation, A is advancement, E integrity, and S is sustainability, and T and trust. As is already the enrollment and the degrees conferred. I'm one of them. And then faculty 1,379, and the annual budget. Daejeon, actually they have 3 campuses, Daejeon and Munji and Seoul. In the 1975, when I was a student, only there is 1 campus in Seoul. And then they expanded to Daejeon. And then all engineering science moved to Daejeon. And then Seoul campus only covers business school now. And that 75 engineering program was in Seoul. Right now, engineering program moved to Daejeon. And then Seoul covers only business program. There's a KAIST Institute, breaking barriers and expanding research influence. I cannot read it very well, but I think they have a lot of engineer research programs and large laboratories and many science and engineering laboratories. And then education 3.0, and breaking the limits of cramming education. So innovative educational practices, group discussion, interactive learning, creative education, and global cyber dual degree program with the Technical University of Denmark, for example, funded by SOI Lee donation of 7 million. Very strangely, and KAIST is getting a lot of donation from outside. And POSTECH does not get much, because whenever POSTECH asks donation, people say, oh, you have a POSCO, okay? Because POSCO, you have a big brother, POSCO is a rich company. So it's very difficult to get a donation from outside, because they think we are, actually, legally we are separated from POSCO. But still, people believe there are a lot of connections between two of us. Create a new environment for startups. So they are very ambitious to entrepreneurships and something like that. Yeah. Creating K-Valley as a Korea's Silicon Valley, K-Valley. Daejeon, the city Daejeon, about, I think, 1 million population, 1.5 million population, and is very famous for Daejeon Industrial Park. I mean, they try to develop K-Valley like a Silicon Valley. But every city in Korea, believe me that I think more than 10 cities, they claim that S Valley, K Valley, D Valley, something like that. POSTECH is also P Valley, you know, so every city is ambitious. Where is POSTECH? Briefly, you know, ranked #1 in the top 100 university under 50 years old, 3 years in a row. And secondly, one of the top 100 global innovation in the world by Thomson Reuters. In fact, we ranked 2010. I think Phil here is at 28 in the world, and I think at that time we were very happy. But I think we believe there is too much. I mean, so it then dropped to 56 and 60. So I think currently 56 and 60 may be the good ranking to us. I mean, like. POSTECH overview, you know, like faculty, I think 400 to 500 is changing student, and only we accept 320 freshmen every year, and they should be, I think, less than 1% in high school. I think very competitive, and getting POSTECH is, you know, is taking stars from the sky like that. So. And this is a so that POSCO Forbes, and this is a kind of praise. And then okay, I got many questions from many people. Say, what's the success factor? Is only 27-year-old university, how can become #1 in the world like that? And then how can you be a really star in Korea, in Asia? I guess there are 3 critical success factors. CSF, full financial and facility support from POSCO. You know, money is very important. The POSCO fully supported the POSTECH, invested, I think, I don't know, maybe they donated $2 billion for endowments, and then probably for the facilities at least another $2 billion. So. I think their annual sales like $40 billion. So they have 10% profit, for example, $4 billion, and mostly will be taken by government as a tax. So if they donate money to POSTECH, I think, you know, that's good for the society. That's what it started like that. And then secondly, recruiting excellent students and the high cutoff score for admission like that. Excellent students and excellent faculty. I mean, there are many things I want to talk, but I think time shortage. So, how you recruit a student? I mean, you know, let me make a long story short. And in 1987, when we opened the university, and then the first president set up the very high score, cutoff score. Then, if you score, there's a national exam. If you cannot make this, we will not admit you like that. Then POSCO people say, I was very surprised that if there is no students apply, what's going to happen? And he said, Ho-gil Kim, he's a hero, and he passed away many years ago, but he said that, okay, if nobody apply, then we'll manage our university with only faculty. Okay, we don't need the students whose score is lower than certain points. And then there's 3-day admission period. And the second day, nobody applied, okay, until second day. So then POSCO was really upset about, you know, there's a lot of, you know, they're blaming Ho-gil Kim like that. And then final day, I think 900 students applied. Final day, there was 3-day application period. And so that was very successful, okay, so I'm gonna finish it again, time pressure. So POSTECH, official, and right now 27 years and the huge facilities, and then so there are a lot of. One thing is that we have an accelerator laboratory, and the only national lab in Korea. So Okay. I'm sorry for that. Okay, bilingual. Thank you so much. Thank you.
To rush you, the mic's on. I'm sorry to rush you, but I do think it's important that we get some audience questions before the session closes. So, but thank you very much indeed. That's quite a contrasting series of institutions in terms of structures and funding and governance systems. So it's interesting there's a shared purpose around the youth side. Do we have any questions from the audience? Do we have a mic down here, please?
Renato Pedrosa from Brazil, University of Campinas, same institute as Álvaro. Comparing, for example, Unicamp to the Korean institutions, we see a drastic difference. Unicamp is a comprehensive university, is publicly funded, no tuition, no fees, has a much larger number of students per faculty compared to the institutes in Korea. So I'd like you to compare, and I direct this question to Álvaro in the sense, can our system of governance and funding provide for, because Brazil doesn't have, I think only a university in the top 200, right? I don't know, it has changed. University of São Paulo, which is a very large university, Unicamp has not showed up in the top 200, but it's close by. But anyway, we have in Brazil a system that is essentially the best universities are fully publicly funded, with a system of governance that involves that, let's say, when you choose leaders, sometimes you have, the federal system is where this is seen more clearly, the state system is different, but a lot of political influence from government in the way the universities are run. So I'd like to see a comment if it's possible to have such a level of excellence in a system where government has so much influence in the. So I like Álvaro to ask, because I have doubts about that. I think the level that we have reached in Brazil at University of São Paulo, Unicamp, and a couple of other federal institutions, I see as a top level that we can reach at the present governance model. I think we need to step forward and maybe change a little bit of that.
Álvaro, do you have any comments?
Well, considering the metrics that I use nowadays by the ranking institutions, and consider all the characteristics that you mentioned about our universities in Brazil, I think to be in the first 100 or 200 of any of these ranked is really an exception. I don't think we can compete on the same grounds using the current metrics with an institution like POSTECH. It's absolutely not possible. But on the other hand, I think, and that's probably why we don't see other Latin American universities under 50 in this rank, right? And even the largest ranks, consider all ages, we don't see many. Because as a public university, as you mentioned, we have a role to fulfill, and that's not intended to perform in the sort of metrics that I used. But I think that's my general comment.
Any other questions? I'd quite like to ask a few myself, actually. There's issues there in terms of the structure, the size, but is focus a key ingredient? I mean, at the top end of these rankings, it is about specialist institutions. They happen to be science and technology driven. But even York, which is pretty comprehensive as an institution, still has to make clear strategic choices about what it does and what it doesn't do. How important, Cohen, is being very selective in what you decide to fund in terms of research?
It's becoming increasingly important, I think. As you say, York is an example of a university that's young and comprehensive. It's got 28 departments. It covers everything from arts and humanities to the sciences and the social sciences. And that's quite unique in that sort of top segment. What is happening, of course, not just in the UK but globally, is that For instance, research funding is becoming increasingly concentrated in centers that are not only excellent, but they're also large. You know, there's a factor of research power, which is not just represented by excellence, but also by volume, that has become an increasingly important driver of funding allocation. Now, if you want to compete in that landscape as a relatively young university where you have a comprehensive spread and therefore still relatively small departments in many corners, you really have to think about how you can align your strengths optimally around very significant interdisciplinary themes in order to be able to show that you have power in a particular area. And it's exactly that kind of thought process that we're going through in the university at this time. So we're going to try to exploit our rich disciplinary base to really create strengths that is aligned with sort of globally important multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary areas.
Thank you. You have a question? Oh, there's one at the back here. Sorry, I saw you holding the mic. I realized there's questions at the back.
Marcus Lemons. I'm an editor at Science Management. How important is a modern management of a university like your size and structure to balance strategic approaches, giving freedom to research, being a partner towards your stakeholder, your partners, your audience? And Professor Purcell, you said very impressively that the students are not the customers, they are partners. How important is an up-to-date and modern management, higher education management, to achieve that what you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's critically important. I mean, I would probably reframe it around the leadership positioning. I think it's really important to articulate a vision that is empowering and that excites people. But I think it's critically important to connect the actions of the individuals that are in the university to delivering those strategic objectives. So we have a very small diagram at the back of our strategy 2020, which shows the individual actions and building on those individual actions all the way through to delivering the strategic intent of the organisation. All of our universities are very busy, and I think it's very important to be able to come into work, to engage in work which is deeply meaningful, but to be able to be guided by the strategic vision of the institution to know which of all the different things in your in tray, which are the most important to lend your attention to. And I think we can give that sense of guidance and that sense of permission, but we do need to set some tram lines down. I think that's the leadership challenge, to excite people, to give them a clear sense of purpose, but to allow them to bring their best selves to work and deliver that strategies. But I think it's a big leadership opportunity.
And Alvaro, there seems to be a perception in, as far as Brazil is concerned, that there's quite a heavy volume of bureaucracy. You have to be very closely aligned with the state's direction. How important do you think institutional autonomy is? I think a lot of these very successful younger institutions have got great freedom from bureaucratic state control. Is that something that you think is a particular challenge for UNICAMP moving forward?
Absolutely. Being a state institution, we are bounded by regulations, or as any other government institution. And that it's a heavy load for universities. So although in São Paulo only we have some freedom to use our budgets completely different from the federal universities in Brazil, we are still bounded by the same public sector rules. So things such as buying a piece of expensive equipment or building a new build is extremely regulated, and that takes a heavy toll in terms of our performance. So I think if we want to really move forward on that aspect, we need to struggle to change these regulations.
And do you think there's a recognition among sort of the authorities that might be needed in Brazil?
In some ways, yes, but I mean, we're still seen as the other public universities, the other public institutions, not as a different kind of public institution, which makes it a bit difficult to achieve this change that we need.
And Professor So, I thought the presentation in terms of the two Korean institutions was fascinating, because POSTECH enjoys an incredibly generous endowment from POSCO and is therefore liberated, whereas KAIST is actually a state institution. It's they're quite dramatically different governance structures there, and you've both managed to achieve excellence under very different circumstances. Which model do you think is going to be the most helpful going forward? You're constantly vying for the top spot between the two institutions.
I think there are pros and cons, and KAIST is very steadily getting money from the government. The government is healthy, so it's, money is guaranteed. All graduate student scholarships are guaranteed by the government. And on the other hand, the postdoc, I think are over 500, the faculty member must feed their own students. So I'm feeding right now 6 students, and then I have to pay tuition and their scholarship, whatever. So that, I mean, we have to fight in the yard, really outside. So, I mean, there's a pros and cons. We are very strong because we are like, fighting animals like that, because we have to get the money from outside, from Samsung. But KAIST is the fact, they are relaxed because money is coming from. So I think, there's a pros and cons. But I think in different paths, both are doing very well. I think, I think the bottom line is KAIST and POSTECH has one strong rule that every the graduate student must publish in order to get a degree. This is a very strong requirement, and making large publications like that. So suppose that we have 1,000 undergraduate, 2,000 graduate students, and then we guarantee 2,000 publications, because they cannot graduate until they publish in their dissertation. It is a very strong requirement in KAIST and POSTECH. I was advised to one German university last year for 2 months, a pretty famous university. I asked the president, let's enforce that the requirements POSTECH has. He said he cannot do it because that's against academic freedom like that. So, but I think there is no academic freedom in POSTECH.
Okay, well, we have to.
That's a good.
On that bombshell, we should be wrapping up the session. So I'd just like to thank the panelists very much, and I hope you enjoy your river cruise if anyone's going on it. So thank you to the panelists.